You are now listening to the Just Corrections podcast with your host, William Young.
Can we just get this show on the road?
Have you ever been out in public and you suddenly realize that you were like completely vulnerable? That happened to me the other day at the Dollar Tree when a former inmate tapped me on the shoulder and I was not ready for it, completely taken by surprise. In this episode, I'm going to break down my mental spiral, the paranoia, and the exhaustion that comes with carrying this job outside of the walls, and then maybe what we can do about it. Greetings, my fearless frontliners, my fellow guardians of the galleries. I'm William Young, and this is the Just Corrections podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm happy you're stopping by. If you're a current, aspiring, retired, or soon to be retiring correctional professional, and you're looking for content that is informative, engaging, that is meant to elevate and educate the profession, then you're in the right place. If you're not looking for those things, then keep on keeping on. That sounded kind of blunt, kind of quick, like just if this is not what you're here for, then move on. But that's sort of how I felt, so that's what I gave you. That's the mood I'm in today. If I want to tell you a story, and I hate to admit it, but I got caught slipping the other day. I got caught slipping in a public place, and I want to share that with you. But before I go any further, I have to thank the members of the Just Corrections Patreon community, the JCP, for sponsoring the video, supporting the channel. Without you, I could not create this premium correctional content that you're consuming. I appreciate you. Thank you. Love you all. If you're watching and you'd like to contribute to support the channel, I'll throw a link in the description below. Or if you'd rather buy a super thanks, you can do that by hitting the little thank you button right below me. So I was in line at the Dollar Tree or the dollar store or wherever I was, and I was shopping with my wife. It was such a weird weekend. It was one of those weekends where I ran into inmates everywhere. And I hate, after 20 years in corrections, I hate going out in public and being around people. And being in large areas, it's so uncomfortable. And if you're in corrections, if you've been in corrections for a while, hopefully you can understand what I'm talking about. Like your hypervigilance, your paranoia, let's just call it what it is, right? It's exhausting. The exhaustion of running through the multiple scenarios over and over and over again, the endless possibilities of things that can happen when you're out and about are just exhausting. And when you're inside, when you're working, you're performing, you're on guard, you're mindful of everything you say, everything you hear, every movement of everybody gets a reaction out of you, right? It makes you pay attention to what's going on. We've talked about situational awareness before, but when we go out, when correctional officers go out, we carry those same mannerisms out into the public with us, and that is exhausting. And I think that's why a lot of us don't go out, all right? I order my groceries online, and it's not that I don't like people, because I do. I long for connection, right? Connection recharges me sometimes when I want it to, but most of the time I don't, and that's part of me being an introvert, right? And that's part of me being a burned out, institutionalized correctional officer. So I'm standing in line at the Dollar Tree, and I get tapped on the shoulder. And my instant thought was like, who is touching me in this store? Like, why won't you just say my name? What's going on? So I turn around, and it's a former inmate, a former, incarcerated person, justice challenged individual, or whatever you want to say, but it was someone who recognized me and I hadn't seen them. And in my mind at that moment, I was vulnerable, right? I had my hands full. I think we were getting stuff for like my son's graduation party. So I had like a giant mixing bowl, I had a ton of scoopers, matching napkins, and all of these things in my hands, and my hands were full, right? And not only were my hands full, but I didn't bring my firearm. I didn't have my knife on me. I was a sitting duck. And I do that sometimes when I go out. I do that because when I'm carrying, when I have my weapon on me, I behave differently. I'm not saying that I'm overly aggressive, but your mentality, your mindset should be different. It should change if you're carrying a weapon, right? You know, the clothes that you have to wear, the outfit, am I printing or not? You know, all of those things that go through your mind when you have a firearm on you. And sometimes I don't want to do that. Sometimes I just want to lead a normal life where I'm not worried about what's happening next. When I'm not trying to be the savior, where I just go to the store and buy some bowls and buy some scoops and spend a bunch of money on stuff we're just going to throw away like 6 hours later. So I get tapped on the shoulder, and I turn around, and it's this kid. And I say kid because to me, you know, everyone under 40 is a kid. But this kid says, "Do you remember me?" And I didn't. For me, he looked like every other guy that's ever been in custody. Very nondescript. It wasn't somebody that I would immediately recognize, and still to this day, I really don't know who this kid was. The point is, it was somebody that I didn't immediately recognize, so it means that they really hadn't caused me any trouble. They were never on my radar, right? You know, you guys know the people that you remember, the people that give you shit, the people that threaten you. Those people stay on your radar. Those people stay in your memory, right? If that makes sense. There are people that come through our facilities that you make a notation of, that you write a report about, that you print off a picture or their mugshot, and you keep it with you because they've either threatened your life, or you're like, if I do run into this person on the street, there could be issues. Like, I want to make sure I remember this person should I need to in the future. But this kid, he wasn't one of those people. He was just a kid. He was one of the thousands of inmates that I've encountered over my career. So he says, "Hey man, how are you?" And I'm like, "Fine, what's up?" And he says, "Do you remember me?" And I always say, "Yeah." So yeah, I do. And I say that because if I don't recognize you immediately, that means that you're not my family. You're not a close friend. So that leaves only a couple of places that I can know you from, right? Like church, coaching, or jail. And more often than not, the interaction is with a former inmate. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely. How are you doing, man? You look good." And the kid didn't look good, though. He looked extremely rough. He looked like he'd been sleeping behind the store. But in my mind, I'm thinking, crap, I must have made some sort of impression on this kid. And I don't know if it was good or bad, or maybe he thinks I'm somebody else, because I do look like a lot of correctional officers. So he says, "Do you remember me?" And I don't really know what his intentions are at this point. And I don't know if he's upset with me, if he wants to tell me how good his life is. Which, to be fair, is the majority of my interactions with ex-inmates. On the outside, they've been like, "Hey, Officer Young. Hey, Mr. Young. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for all you did for me. I appreciate the way you treated me. I'm doing well, and that's good." But it's still an uncomfortable interaction because you don't know. So this kid says, "Hey, do you remember me?" And I say, "Yeah, of course I do. How are you? How have you been? How's life treating you?" And he says he's good. He says he has some job somewhere. And he says, "Hey, do you remember those stories that you used to tell us when you were doing your rounds?" See, when I would do my rounds, I would walk through and I'd talk to the inmates some nights. Some nights, maybe ghost stories. Some nights we'd talk about biblical prophecy. Some nights it was about the Illuminati. It was just a conversation to gain rapport, to gather information, to get some FaceTime. And that's how I like to do business, right? And if you don't do business like that, that's fine. But I found personally for me that communicating, talking about different things, whatever the topic, I would come in and say, "What are we talking about tonight, fellas?" And then they would be like, "Listen," and that's how I would get the information. So he says, "Do you still tell those stories?" And I said, "No, man, that was a long time ago. Like, I don't have the opportunity to do that like I used to, but I'm glad you're doing good and have a nice day." And here's the thing, we're standing in line now. So this guy is going to be behind me for a little bit while I'm checking out. And I got this lady in front of me that's buying like 360 items at $1 a piece. And then it's us, and then it's this kid behind me. And so I start to kind of freak out a little bit. Where did this kid come from? I'm trying to place him. How come I didn't see him come in the store? Is he by himself? He's got nothing in his hands, so I'm not sure why. Like, what's the purpose of him standing behind me? Is it just to get behind me, I think? I couldn't see anything, but I felt like a sitting duck because I got caught slipping. And now I'm pissed, right? Now I'm pissed at myself. And let me describe the spiral. There's some correctional officers, maybe you, maybe not. Maybe I'm an anomaly, right? Maybe I overthink things. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe you're sitting there and you're listening and you're thinking this dude is nuts, but maybe you're not. Drop it in the comments. Let me know if you think I'm nuts or not. So let me describe the spiral, and maybe the shoe fits, right? Maybe the shoe fits. I got caught slipping. I don't know who this kid is. I'm unarmed. I'm with my wife, so now he knows what my wife looks like. He obviously remembers me. He's got nothing in his hands, so I'm not sure why he's standing behind me. What's my next move? Do I drop this stuff and prepare for an attack? If he jumps, what's my move? Where are my exits? Will this lady with 360 items please hurry up so I can get out of here and get on my way so I can get home back to my safe space? And I say safe space kind of flippant because me and my buddy, recently retired correctional officer, we were talking about safe spaces and how his apartment is a safe space and how our houses, our couches are our safe space. So I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about how disappointed I am that I allowed myself to be put in this position, that I got caught slipping, that I let my guard down for a little bit, and now whatever happens is going to happen because I wasn't prepared. So then I start slipping. I start spiraling. I start thinking about the other decisions that led to this, and now I'm angry. So stupid. So stupid that I want to go to the Dollar Tree to pick up these things on a Saturday afternoon. I could have gone on a Tuesday evening when this guy wouldn't have been here. And I start questioning all of my judgments, all of my movements. I start looking at myself disappointed that I have to live the way that I'm living. If this is the end, and again, I'm describing my mental spiral here, right? If this is the end, if this is how I go out, then this is bullshit. This is not what I envisioned, and I don't want to play no more. Have you ever had one of those days when you're working and you have a situation and you're like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this anymore. I've dodged another bullet. I've almost been assaulted again, or maybe you were assaulted, or maybe your partner got assaulted, or you've watched an officer have a heart attack or get buried, and you're like, this lifestyle is nuts. It's crazy, and I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to take my ball and I want to go home and I want to pretend this never happened. I used to have dreams when I was younger, 12 or 13. I had a paper out, and I remember that my mom would wake me up on Saturday and Sunday mornings, especially on Sunday. You have to get up early and fold the paper and get them ready, and my mom would wake me up at whatever time, and she'd say, hey, it's time to get up and go deliver the papers. And I would drift off back to sleep, and I would have a dream that I got up and delivered the papers, and I'd be feeling good. And then my mom would wake me up again, this time screaming at me, right? Because I had not gotten up. She thought that I'd gotten up, and she'd folded half the papers, and she'd said, come on, and we'd go deliver the papers. And I found out that the paper route was not done, and I was so disappointed. That disappointment, that sadness of thinking one thing and then finding out reality is another, and it hits you pretty hard sometimes. And while I'm standing there in line, and the lady in front of me has successfully scanned half of her 360 items, whatever I said, because she's making small talk with the cashier at the same time. While I'm standing there in line and waiting for her to finish, reality is slapping me in the face saying, hey, you live a life, you work a job, whether or not the public wants to admit it, whether or not you get sort of any positive recognition or fulfillment out of the profession, you work a dangerous job where you may run into these people, and not only on the inside is your safety at risk, but you may run into these people outside, out of uniform, in your daily life. Your safety is at risk. Not only now is my safety at risk because I'm holding these bowls and I got this guy who wants to have a conversation with me, but my wife has now been recognized, tied together, and now he's going to follow us home and kill us all, right? These are all the things that are running through my mind. So I said, no, bro, that was a long time ago. I don't really have the opportunity to tell stories like that anymore. So he says, hey, now that I'm out, now that I'm doing better, I'd love to hang out. You were like a positive role model for me, and I appreciate the way you treated me inside, which again is how most of my interactions are. And that's great. That's perfect. But now this guy wants my number. He says, hey man, can I get your number? I want to hang out. Now I know a lot of people, right? Not just correctional officers, but a lot of people have that automatic response thing, things escape your lips before you have time to sort of vet them with your brain. And working in corrections, a lot of the time that automatic response is no. So not only did no escape my lips, but a disgusted, what are you, crazy? Who do you think I am? Why are you even talking to me? No is what slipped out. So now I'm thinking like, this is sort of a positive interaction, but how aggressive is this guy going to be about wanting to hang out and wanting my number? He says, do you want to hang out? No, dude, I don't want to hang out with you. All right, so now I'm working, right? I'm now in CO mode. Now I have to use my wits because I'm not inside a concrete building behind a wire fence. I'm out, I'm exposed, and he probably knows that I live close to where I am, and so that's sort of bothering. Because if I just blow this dude off, if I'm too disrespectful, or if he takes my no that just fell out of my mouth as disrespect and answer that he didn't want, I mean, who in their right mind would ask a correctional officer when they saw him out on the streets to hang out with them, and not knowing that they were an offender, knowing that they were in the facility? I mean, who does that, right? I would never trust that there wouldn't be some sort of ulterior motive or angle, or that it wouldn't be a setup to hurt me or kill me or harm my family later. But that's probably a whole another video. So he wants to hang out with me, and I've already said no. Not only no, but fuck no. I didn't say exactly that way, but that was my tone. And he kind of looks at me like I just told him that there's no Easter bunny. That he thought that I was going to say yes and that we were going to be besties and exchange bracelets and all of that. So I said, look, man, I can't. But if you ever want to hang out or talk, just come back to jail and I'll be there, and then we can hang out and chat. And we laughed. And he said, no, I'm not ever coming back there. So I said, well, then I guess we can't hang out. And finally, the lady in front of us with the 360 items was done. My wife was checking out. I turned around to pay and then turned back around, and the kid was gone. He didn't go through the checkout. He didn't get in another line. He wasn't outside waiting for me. I don't know where the hell he went. He just disappeared. That was kind of crazy. And then I was on my way. And that was probably the fourth or fifth inmate that I had ran into that weekend. It was terrible. Like, I know that it's part of the job, and normally I don't run into that many people in that short period of time, but I didn't like it. And I wasn't having it, and I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't having a good time. I wanted to go home. I wanted to hide. I was done. And then I was thinking, this is absolutely the reason that I don't go out. Do you guys ever feel like this job is changing you, like the weight of the walls are pressing in and you're not necessarily the same person who walked through those gates? Well, you're not imagining things. Corrections, the training, the trauma, the time that we spend inside rewires the way we think, react, and the way we see the world. And that's exactly why I wrote my new book, Train to Change: The Unfortunate and Unintentional Consequences of the Correctional Curriculum. It's a deep dive into how this career shapes us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and more important, how we take back control. So whether you're a rookie or a veteran, this book right here, this tool, will help you recognize the hidden impacts of the job and give you the tools to push back, stay sharp, and protect your well-being if you're in this profession, or you know somebody who is. Grab this book, read this book, use this book as a tool to educate and elevate yourself and the profession. Get your copy of Train to Change today, available on Amazon. I'll throw the link in the description. Start taking control of your story today. And hey, if you've already read it, leave me a review and let me know what you think. Start changing. Let's start changing the conversation about mental health and corrections, normalizing the conversation in mental health and corrections together. So my wife, bless her heart, was kind of laughing about the whole thing, and I'm not laughing. It's not funny. And sometimes I don't articulate well enough, explain to her well enough, share with her what's going on in my head. So these interactions, right, she doesn't understand. And she doesn't know what it feels like, because this wasn't just, I ran into a couple of inmates this weekend. This was a holy crap. The walls are closing in on me. I'm running into inmates everywhere. My safety is in jeopardy, not only inside of the facility, but outside of the facility. And I was, on that particular day, really struggling with that. And I was struggling because I got caught slipping. So we get in the car, we're driving home, and I start replaying that event over and over and over in my head. And I'm running through the multitude of possibilities of outcomes for what had just happened, right? Guy taps me on the shoulder. I turn around and he shoots me in the face, and I die on the floor of the Dollar Tree with an armful of scoops and plates and napkins in front of my wife. And the crazy lady is still ringing up her 365 items, right? Or guy taps me on the shoulder, stabs me in the stomach with a rusty utility knife, and I die in the hospital 3 weeks later from a massive infection. I'm running through all of those things that could have happened to me at that moment. Guy taps me on the shoulder. We exchange playful banter. He follows me home, breaks into my house, and kills everybody. At that moment right then, guys, I wasn't okay. And I tried to explain that, but I didn't do a very good job because I normally don't do a very good job. And it really messed up the day. It really affected my day. And I tell you this story for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you have this sort of encounter, if your mind goes to these places, then you're not alone. You're not a weirdo. You're not weak. You're not unfit to do the job. You're normal, right? Well, normal is subjective, right? For us in this profession, you're normal. You're a normal, albeit institutionalized correctional officer, because the skills that you use, the skills that they teach you to survive on the inside, absolutely mess with us on the outside. So that's the first thing that I want you to know. That although my reaction, the story that I'm telling you, would seem abnormal or worrisome to someone outside of our world, it's really not uncommon for us to react, to feel that way. It's not uncommon for us to scan the exits and the entrances of the places that we go, to size up the people in the dining room of the restaurant that we go eat with our families, to sit with our backs to the wall so we can watch the comings and the goings of everybody, because where we work, because what we do, because we're taught to forecast, to predict every possible, not potential, but every possible outcome. We're trained to try to predict the future. We're trained to prepare for everything and nothing. So we don't know how to shut that off after doing it for so long, for 60, 70 hours a week, for 8, 12, 16 hours a day for years. It becomes how we view the world. It becomes how we view other people. It changes the way that we operate outside out of uniform. So we're normal. It's normal. I mean, you get what I'm saying. We're the same, right? We're thinking about things the same way, trying to avoid the same things. So what are we going to do about it? The secret, right? The truth is that we're all falling apart. We're all cracking up. We're just cracking up at different rates. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what we can do when we're at a point where we're like, look, I don't want to live life like this anymore. I don't want to ruin my weekend. I don't want to have those feelings, that spiral that I described. So how do we fight through that? How do we combat? How do we minimize the damage, the impact that somebody tapping you on the shoulder at the Dollar Tree can have on you, to not let it ruin your weekend, to not let it ruin your life, to not let our heart rate jump up, right? What can we do? Well, the first thing that I'll tell you, that I'll suggest, and some of these things are easier said than done, right? This is like going to be working out. This is like pushing yourself, maxing out, getting up and doing leg day when you don't want to get up and do leg day, but for your emotional health, your emotional wellness. So some of the things that we're going to talk about, some of these exercises, these techniques are going to take some work. And the only one that can do the work, the only one that can push you through this and become stronger, happier, healthier, is yourself. You can have a personal trainer, a strong support network, a therapist. You can have all of these things that we're going to talk about, but if you're not ready or willing to acknowledge you have some work to do, then you're not going to put in the work. You're not going to put in the work to put yourself on a better path, and then this is going to be all for naught. But I'm going to assume, since you're still watching, since you're still listening, that you want this information, that you want to change your outlook and how you live your life, maybe just a little bit, and maybe unload some of the baggage that you've been carrying, that you've been dealing with. So the number one exercise, the first thing that I want you to do, that I'm going to tell you to do, that you're going to shake your head and roll your eyes, whatever, is to get out more, is to get around people, is to experience life, do things that normal people do. When I say normal people, I mean people that don't wear a uniform for a living, people that don't work in the correctional environment. And I want you to go out and I want you to go into the store to buy your groceries. I want you to go into the store to pick your produce. I want you to go shopping with your spouse and with your kids. I want you to go to the movies. I want you to go to the park and do the picnic. I wrote a chapter in my first book called I Didn't Go to the Picnic, because every year the union holds a picnic for their members and their families, and I never went. And you could read the book and all about it, but you need to go to those picnics. You need to go to those outings and maintain those connections, because let me tell you what happens. You may have more interactions like my interaction at the Dollar Tree if you were out and about, but what that shows you is that it'll be okay. You're going to be okay, that the majority of those interactions are going to be benign, that nothing is going to happen, that they're just going to say, hey, CO, I'm out and I'm living life. I'm doing fine. Thank you. And then they'll move on. Not only that, but you're going to interact with normal people on a daily basis and realize that the world is not necessarily a dark and scary place, although we feel like that because our world inside is a dark and scary place. But see, the reality is not even the majority of people on the inside are problematic. Now, I know, depending on where you work, that there's definitely crazy people, and that there are the people that definitely need to be in jail and prison, and there's certainly reasons for them to be locked up. But people outside, people working in the grocery store, people working at the movie theaters, people shopping for their bowls and their scoops for their graduation, and the lady in the line in front of me are just trying to live life. They don't care about you. They're not there to destroy you. They're not there to rob the place or commit a mass killing. They're just living life. They're just going about their business. And the only way that you can prove to yourself that that's true is to partake in that. I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, I don't like people. I don't trust people. Then go around people and see. You just don't like the people that you've interacted with. And really, part of that is because you've isolated yourself over the course of your career and over the last few years, because you've been taught, right? You've been trained not to trust people that you interact with. What you didn't realize is that you were carrying that home with you. You didn't realize that was following you home, because they also told you not to bring work home with you, which is total bullshit. Everybody brings their work home with them. Everybody talks about their job. Everybody needs to vent. They need to get it out there. They need someone to listen, and so do we. So why don't we? Because it's painful, because we're trying to protect them, because it's too difficult to describe. So instead of doing that, we bottle it up. And then what happens is that you're out on a Saturday, right? And you're buying stuff for your son's graduation party, and an inmate sneaks up on you and it destroys you. It ruins your day. It scares the living shit out of you, because you're not working through, you're not acknowledging, you're not processing the things, the effects that the job has on you. So you have to get out and be around and deal with people, real everyday normal people. Force yourself to get out and deal with people. But if you do that and it's not working, if you're so tense and you're so tight and you keep retreating back to your self-imposed isolation, then I would highly recommend that you go speak with a professional, that you reach out to your peer support team at your facility, that you talk to your wellness coordinator, that you get a reference to a community partner, to a resource, to somebody that understands our heads, our hearts, our world, and go to them and talk to them. And then start unpacking years and years of baggage that you've been lugging around, that you've been stuffing down, that you've been keeping to yourself because you don't want to bother anybody else, because you didn't want to scare anybody else, because you wanted to protect people from the horror show that is corrections. Start to unpack it, start to work through it, and they can help you look at the world in a different way, can give you a different perspective of what the world actually is and how to see that. I watched a webinar a while back with Jocko. He was on there along with a couple other people, and they were talking about the ways and the importance of self-care, and Jocko likened it to a mechanic. He said he's not mechanically inclined at all. He said when something is wrong with his car, he takes it to the mechanic. He takes it to the mechanic and lets the mechanic do mechanic things and listens when they tell him that they need to, fix whatever they need to fix. And he says that he does that with a lot of different things. So why would he try to fix himself, right? He's not a brain mechanic. He doesn't know about dopamine and serotonin and mood stabilizers and the depth of what trauma has done to him. He goes to his brain doctor and he gets help. And if Jocko, if this badass Navy SEAL can admit that, understand that, then why can't we? All right, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for enduring the long, winded story. That was me getting caught slipping. I appreciate you checking out the podcast. New episodes are available every day, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Set a reminder on your phone. Set an alarm on your phone, on your calendar. There's a link in the description of this episode that you can click, add it to your calendar so you never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the show, follow the show on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, all the grams. Here's what I want you to do. Leave a comment, get involved, share your input, engage, share the show with your friends, family, fellow correctional professionals, everybody that you think may be interested, that may get some value out of something that we're saying here today, the Just Corrections podcast. And if you're interested in supporting the show, consider becoming a member of the Just Corrections Patreon community, the JCP. There are a couple of different tiers, different options. Check it out. I'll put the link in the description. Check out the books, Train to Change, The Nothing That Never Happened, When Home Becomes a Housing Unit, all available on Amazon. All the links to everything that you would ever need in the description of this video. And if you're looking to have somebody come out to your facility, if you'd like to bring me out to speak or present at your event, send me an email, justcorrections.booking@gmail.com. All right, guys, that's all I got. Whew, that was a lot. But that's all I got this time. All right. Until next time, be smart, stay safe, stay sane, and we'll talk soon.